Hey guys, Fat Man Outdoors. Today I want to do a little short video, not take too much of your time. Kind of cover some things that are common to catfishermen. The persona of most people when they think about someone who is a catfisherman is you got a rusty old hook, maybe a couple of lug nuts you keep in your pocket, and a piece of styrofoam float that you found somewhere on the side of the bank at a pay lake or something, and a reel with 200 yards of 50-pound test line on it, and you're just poking hope. Kind of like somebody that can't shoot pool and they just take a chance when they hit the cue ball. Well, I want to try to erase that myth. I know catfishermen are not as equipped, let's say, or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just that we don't carry as much equipment as a bass fisherman or a pan fisherman. We don't got 14 tackle boxes filled with every lure that you can get off the shelf at your local Walmart. But that's not to say we don't have to carry equipment. We have things that we need for different situations and different circumstances, just the same as a bass fisherman would, or a pan fisherman would, or even someone who fished for saltwater fish. You ain't going to go out with the same gear looking for a Goliath grouper as you would if you went out looking for a tarpon. It's just not going to work. It's not going to happen. So everybody's got to have their stuff. I think there's been a little bit of bad shade put on catfishermen about equipment and that we don't really require anything, that we're just kind of them guys that hope we can catch something. I'll show you a little different with my tackle box. I think you'll be better off if you don't have to look at my ugly face for all of this video, so I'm going to kind of move the camera here just a little bit so you can see better what I'm dealing with and what I'm going to show you that is a catfisherman's bread and butter when it goes to the water. First thing, if you notice, my tackle box does not look like a tackle box. It looks like something that Bob the Builder would carry, and it's built that way too. Reason being, catfisherman's got a lot of rough and tough situations that we go through, bigger stuff laying around in the boat, beating and banging, carrying more stuff, a lot more weight. A lot of times the tackle boxes you can buy off the shelf at Walmart just won't cut it, so you got to have something that's a little bit stronger that will hold the stuff that you're going to put in it and protect it. I'll show you what I mean. When you open this up, you'll notice there's a yellow ring all the way around the lid on this. Well, that is a positive moisture lock. It won't allow any moisture into the box, whether it's rain or condensation or anything. This box sits in my boat, never comes out. It's not in a compartment, sits in the floor in my boat and never comes out of it. Winter, spring, summer, fall, doesn't matter. It stays in there. If it gets 12 inches of snow on it, oh well, it'll be there when I come back to get it, because it's not a cheap tackle box you get off the shelf at Walmart. It's made for harsh conditions. It's made to get beat up. So it's going to take all that abuse. Now, the trade-off to that is they don't give you a lot of compartments in these, but they do give you a tray that'll sit out that you can keep some stuff in. And you could probably get some of those little organizers and put in the top of this or even in the bottom and do it better than I do. But the stuff I carry, I pretty much keep it where I want it, and I know where it's at in the box. And when I go to get it out, it's always right there. One of the first things that I think is the most important to a catfisherman is hooks. Now, you're going to find yourself in situations where you're going to need hooks that are different sizes. This one right here, that's a 6/0. This is an 8. I've got some in here that are 5s. I've got some in here that are 10s. Just depending on, if I'm in an area where I know the fish are small, I'm not going to fish with a 10/0 hook. If I'm in an area where I know there's 30 or 40 pound catfish, big blues or big flatheads, and I'm going to be using big pieces of bait, then I'm going to pull out one of those 10/0s and slap a big head off of a shad or off of a bluegill, or maybe even a full bluegill, or if I'm in the right place and I can get them, even a skipjack with a big head, because catfish absolutely love that. That's like candy to them. But without quality hooks, now there's a lot of hooks you can buy that are cheap and that will save you a lot of money. There's a lot of hooks that are very expensive. Some of the Gamatsu hooks are crazy, the cost that they cost. Then you got some I seen, I believe they were like Uncle Ernie or something like that I saw at Walmart, some kind of off-brand catfish hook. They were a lot cheaper, but to me they just looked like that they just wouldn't be that stout, just the way they were made. And my luck, and I'm not trying to come out for anybody's equipment. I test stuff. Okay, this is I use the stuff I buy, see what works best, and if it don't work good, it don't go in my tackle box. I get rid of it. But the Team Catfish hooks, and for the smaller ones, it's the jackhammer is what it's called. A 6/0 is or a 5/0 is usually what I'll use for those smaller hooks. If I know I'm going to be fishing for channel cats or smaller blue cats, or I'll tell you something else is a neat little trick to do with these smaller hooks that'll help you sometimes. If you're fishing for flatheads in brush or in a lot of rocks, and you're fishing under a float, because that's the way I fish for them, I'll use a two hook rig, a double hook rig. Only one hook will go in the bait, only one. The other one will just hang just in front of the bottom of my bait. So my way of thinking is, if a catfish gets on with that smaller hook, it gives a better opportunity for him to move around, and while he's fighting that first hook and get the other one in him, then I've got a 2 times better chance of landing that fish, because I've got him hooked up in 2 hooks. But there is a drawback to that too. If he gets you down in brush, he's going to hang you up easier, but it'll make it to where the bait you're using, especially if it's live bait, can get down in there with a smaller hook, and a lot of times you won't hang up on the structure that you're fishing around using a smaller hook. Whereas, say if you take this big number 8 right here, the difference in the gap, and you can see the difference in the gap of those hooks. The gap's that wide on an 8 and just that wide on that little 6, and it'll give you a lot better chance of not getting hung up in heavy cover. It does me. You know, some people may argue that's crap, that don't work, but it works for me, or it has to this point, so I keep on going with it. I mean, you're going to expect to lose gear if you're catfishing and you're not losing, especially flathead. If you're not losing gear, if you're not hanging up, you're fishing in the wrong place. You know, if you're on the Ohio River fishing for blue cats and you're dragging the main river channel, and then it's a lot of difference. But when you start getting up in the brush and rocks looking for flatheads, if you ain't losing hooks and you ain't hanging up, you're not fishing the right spot, because that's where they live and that's where they find their food. Now, the next important part of your rig, if you're going to be fishing for catfish, is going to be whether or not you decide to use a rig that's a Santee Cooper type rig. And what I mean by Santee Cooper type rig, I don't have one sitting here close to show you, but you'll have a float attached to the line, one of these little peg floats attached to your line just above your hook, 6-7 inches above your hook, so that when your main sinker's on the bottom, this float will gently hold your bait up off the bottom just a little bit. And you can get different sizes of these. I would say you can get them at Walmart, but now here's the problem, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just where there's a lot of catfishermen around here, but the local Walmarts in this area, I can hardly find these floats around here. And what they are is, you can pull that little plastic dude out of there, you pop and pull them out both ends, pop your line in there, and you can move it up and down the line really easily, and then you just stick them back in, and it locks that fishing line in place and it can't move. But what you want to do is, if you can't get these, there is another way to do that. You can make what I call a double knot rig, where you'll tie a double knot in your line about 6 inches above the hook, and put on a bead, then put on a slip swivel or slip float that's like these, and then put another bead on, then tie a double knot above that, and give you just a little bit of room. You know, it doesn't have to be tight, but just up close to it. And you'll actually get a little noise out of that float bouncing back and forth, hitting those beads when you're dragging. And there's some people that kind of believe in that. You know, they say that having rattles and stuff works well for catfish. I'm Neither here nor there on it. I've tried it. I've caught fish with it. I've caught fish without it. Probably doesn't hurt unless you've got a bunch of fish that's feeling a lot of fishing pressure. And then I'm going to say the quiet approach might be better. Because if you got a lot of people that's fishing for fish in a lake, you got a lot of people that's pressuring catfish, and they're seeing a lot of stuff all the time. I'm going to think the rattles might hurt you more than they help. Maybe in October, when the catfish are trying to eat as much as they can, that might be a good thing, because it'll alert them to there's something in the area. I'm going to go check that out to see if I can swallow it. May work. I don't know. But anyway, floats is another thing that you need to keep in your tackle box. You need to keep bags and bags of them, and you can buy them cheap. Every time I go to Walmart, every time I see them, I buy them every single time. If I don't leave them on the shelf, if they've got 10 on the shelf, I buy all 10 of them. Because the problem with that is, about 1 out of 10 trips, I'll go to a local Walmart here and find them. They're just not there. But like I say, if I see them and somebody ain't got them before I get them, I get them. Now, the next thing above that is going to be where you tie your leader to your main line. Now, you're going to need some good, strong swivels. Now, when I say good, strong swivels, I'm talking about something like this. Take a power swivel. This is a size 2/0. Okay, this thing will hold about 90 pounds. I don't know how familiar you are with the drag system on your reels. That far out measures what your drag system is going to put on your line. But more than that is, it's beefy. The eyelets are big, and it's easy to work with, and you ain't got to worry about it getting banged up against something and maybe get a weak spot in it. It's going to hold what you got to do. There's also some that I use when I'm fishing in different types of rigs. Is a 3-way swivel. Now, when you put the swivels on your main line and connect your leader line to that, a lot of people use a 3-way swivel and use a drop for their sinker, and it kind of makes it to where it's a money-saving rig. Okay, you can put a sinker a few inches below that 3-way swivel and leave it on a weaker strength line, say 10-pound test line, and majority of the time what's going to get hung up when you're drifting or dragging is that sinker. And this way you'll only snap off the sinker, and the sinker snaps off, then your float that's holding your bait is going to automatically start floating your line up, and you're not going to lose your whole rig. You're just going to lose the sinker. And in theory, you could make up a few of these with some cheap swivels, bass swivels, small ones, that if that happens, you just reel your line back in, still got everything, snap your one right back on it, put it back in the water, and you're back in business. But what I like to do is I just use the normal 2-ended swivel. And then on the main line end of my rig, that's where I want to put my sinker. Either I'm going to snap on a drifting stick or a stick type weight, or even if I'm going to use a regular weight, just a egg sinker that's got an eye in it, just different kinds of weights that you can put on that way. Then you can just snap them right on that, and what it does is it doesn't really make it more weedless. It just makes it easier for you to bring your gear in and change weights. If you get in an area and the current's holding your bait off the bottom and you want to get it on the bottom and you've only got a 3-ounce weight, then you reel it in, take it off, put a 5 or 6 ounce weight on it with a snap, throw it back out, and you're right back in business, instead of sitting there and waiting 20 or 30 minutes to fish while you gather all your stuff up and put another rig together. It's got a heavier weight. This way, it's just a pow kind of a thing. You can make it work quick. Now, getting to that snap thing. Here is something that's out on the market now that's called a sinker slide, easy sinker slide. I don't know if you guys have seen these. I'll pull one out of the pack and let you take a look at them. They have a snap on them that's a whole lot like the snaps that they use on planer boards. If you guys have planer boards, you've seen these, okay? They're a little bit small for me for planer boards because they're made out of smaller stuff, and they'd be a little bit tedious to deal with if you're trying to keep a fish from coming off your line and trying to get your planer board off the line so you can fight the fish and all that stuff. But so I use bigger ones for my planer board. But what you got with this is this little green, like a knuckle deal, and your line goes in that, and it pops up inside of there and goes through those little holes. One goes in one side and out the other side. Then it'll slide up and down your main line, and it's above the swivel where your leader and your main line go together. And again, you can make these ahead of time, okay? You can take them apart, snap you on maybe a couple that's 5 ounce, 6 ounce, 3 ounce. If you're in real heavy swift water or real deep, maybe something as big as a 6 or 8 ounce. And then just close the snap and keep them thrown in your tackle box with the sinker already on it, with your weight already attached. And then all you have to do is, if you see an application that you need more weight, change it out. You don't have to change your whole rig. You just reel it in, take that off, throw it back in the tackle box, get out the one you need, put it on, right back in the water, you're fishing again. The whole deal is you want to make things as simple as possible, and you want to try to cover as much as you can while you're not on the water, so you don't eat up your fishing time doing the stuff you need to do to prepare. Now, another thing that I keep in my tackle box is these. Now, what these are is, these are a pre-made monofilament double drop bottom rig, okay? Now, a lot of people call these a Kentucky rig. And what you do is you can attach a hook in 2 places. Now, before you use these, make sure, so nobody goes to the jailhouse. Make sure that it's legal in your state to have more than one hook on a line at a time. Some states don't allow that. But anyway, you can put 2 hooks on this at one time. And that way you can run 2 baits together. So you've got a double bait trail. Now, a lot of people that fish for flatheads quite often, and the bite gets slow. They'll kind of go to this. They want to go with this Kentucky rig because, like I said, it creates a bigger scent trail in the water, especially if you're fishing with shad or skipjack. It puts a lot more blood, a lot more oil in the water. And there is a drawback, and I bet you already know what it is. You got 2 hooks, you got 2 times the chance to get snagged, and if you're fishing in the water where the flatheads live, that's going to be a problem. And there's no way to combat it. You know, you just have to deal with it. You have to try to play luck. Just make sure when you throw your line in, you got the proper amount of weight on it. And that way you can take these little jewels right here and change it, get the proper amount of weight on it, so when your bait and line hits the water, it stays where you put it. It doesn't get a chance to come down with the current or move around and take a chance on hanging it. And that way, as soon if you've got to bring it in for some reason, you can put a big lift on that, try to get it off the bottom as quick as possible, and have a less chance of getting hung up. But that is something. Now, a lot of people make their own, and I got nothing against that, not at all. But when I can buy these for $1.99, and they're pretty stout. I mean, they're made with pretty good stuff. I wouldn't really expect these smaller swivels to stand up to a 50 or 60 pound fish. But I'd say if you're in a place where you're not going to get into the big flatheads, the great big ones, and you can keep your drag adjusted a little bit looser, even for that, you'll be fine with these. I believe you'll be just all right. But these are a great big help when you're fishing in a place that you want to get some more bait in the water, and the bite's slow. It'll help you a whole lot. And it's not that expensive, and it's a quick change out. If you break one off, you tie a loop knot in your main line, or put a swivel on your main line and pop it right back on, and you're ready to go again. Now, one of the this is going to sound weird for catfishermen, all right, but here it is. These are 2 things I try to keep in my tackle box all the time. Is white and chartreuse, small as I can find them, twirl tail jigs. And the reason that I have these is because I've had more luck catching skipjack off of these than anything that I've ever used. And I also can catch a lot of bluegill on these. if I fish them under a float and just pop it and move them slow. With skipjack, just put a couple of them on the line together, throw them and just reel them in. You can maybe put a little weight on them if you're in a place that's got current on them to hold it down, but they'll bite them. And the reason being is for that, you got enough stuff to deal with, a lot of rods and big net and everything else, than trying to get in a boat and carrying live bait. You know, trying to keep night crawlers out of the heat, or trying to keep the cricket cage from getting kicked over, or trying to keep the mealworms from getting spilled. This way you got something that's artificial. You can tie on to a small rod that you can keep with you in your boat and catch bait if you need to. Most of the time, what I try to do, if there's any way possible, I like to go the night before and catch bait and just keep it in a cooler with an aerator and keep it alive, unless it's like crazy hot, and it's hard to do it if it's that way, and you just kind of have to catch them the next morning and deal with it best you can. But if you can go previous to going fishing to catch your bait and keep it alive, then you don't necessarily need that. But if you're in a situation where that's the best for you, that's what I do. 90% of the time, you're gonna have a situation where you're gonna go to the lake and try to catch bait and then fish later up in the day. That's what I like to do. But you know, it just it's a good way to get the kids and the wife in the boat on occasion too. Take them bait fishing. You know, let them go fish for bluegill, and then you keep your little honey hole for small channel cats, and they get tired of catching bluegill or get tired of catching skipjack. Then take them to your little honey hole of your channel cats, set them down with a box of night crawlers, let them catch dinner. All right, now, that's about what I keep in the top of my tackle box, is my hooks, my swivels, my sinker slides, and my pre-made rigs. Now, what's in the bottom? What's in the bottom? Now, what I do, I keep a full spool. Trilene Big Game, 25-pound test. And this is because, and I don't know why this happened, I have an Ambassador 6500 reel that I've fished with for years. I change the line in it every other year. One year I changed the line in that reel, put brand new line in it, on the water 20 minutes, hook a catfish, 20, 25 pounds. Got the fish almost to the boat, the line broke. I thought, well, his hook slipped. Reeled it up, line broke above my swivel where the main line and my leader went together. So, okay, that's a little weird. I wonder what happened there. So, re-rigged, put it back out. 10 minutes later, hooked another fish, much smaller fish. Maybe 12, 14 pounds, maybe. Got it almost to the boat. He pulled one good hard time, broke my line. I thought, what is going on here? I was checking the eyes on my reel. I was checking the guide on my level line. Something's got a sharp edge somewhere. Couldn't find nothing. So I pulled about 10 or 15 feet of my line out. And about every 15 feet, there was a nick in the line where you could just go and pop that 25-pound test line. And that's Trilene Big Game. That don't happen. I mean, that stuff, you pull it with a truck just about it, even it just being 25-pound test line. It's hard to break. So I keep a full roll in my boat now, so that if I have that kind of issue with a reel that I've took with me to fish, I'll change it while it's on the water. And that way it don't knock me down to being a real short. That's why I keep. So that's why I keep that whole spool of 25-pound test line in the boat. Okay. Now, fishing line. I've also got, here, kitty, 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 kitty. Where'd you go? Yeah, I mentioned. I also got a spool of 8-pound test line in here. And what I use that for is what I was talking about earlier. If I want to make drops to make a breakaway, if I'm in a place where I know there's a lot of stuff you can get hung up on and I still want to fish on the bottom, I'll use these, tie to my swivel right up on my main line side of the swivel, and use a drop and put my weight on that. And then that way, if my sinker gets hung up, I just pop my line. I don't lose my hook. I don't lose my leader and all that. I just got to snap on another wait, and go back to business. Now, everybody knows what these are. I've got some of these I keep in the tackle box, and I've got some of them that, like this, I've got 2 of them in the tackle box open and 2 like this. They're marker buoys. All they are is you just got a piece of lead on them. You open that up, take it off. You can pitch them in the water, it'll unroll and hold itself right there, so it'll tell you where you threw it out. What I keep these for, if I'm fishing in a place where there's a big ledge on a bend in the old river channel, I'll mark that ledge. And that way, when I get back away from it with my boat, if I'm going to anchor up and try to cast into it, then I'll know exactly where I marked that ledge at. And I can pull my boat to within easy casting distance of that, anchor up, and then throw to that ledge. I can throw past that ledge, and it's going to drop to the bottom half of the ledge or the bottom end of the ledge. And then if I need to, I can work my lure a little bit at a time, wait a few minutes, crank it up a couple cranks, bring it up that ledge till I find how far down those fish are on that ledge, because catfish love ledges. They'll move up and down those ledges all day looking for something to eat. Now, another important thing in my tackle box, a pair of industrial scissors. Now, these are not your mama's scissors. These things will cut anything. What I use them for is, if I'm fishing for bluegill, or fishing with bluegill, I'll cut their tails off if I'm fishing live with them. And it still allows them to get movement in the water, but they can't swim off and get into something and get wrapped around something as easy. I've had some, I think you could have cut their head off and they still would have done it. But they'll cut those fins off, the tails off, no problem. If you're going to fish with white bass, same, you need to cut the back spines off them white bass, because they're big and they can cause an issue. What'll happen is the fish will go to bite down on them, that spine will pop up in defense, and the fish will spit them and won't bite and take the hook. So you cut them spines off right across their back, and that way that you don't got that problem. And another thing too that these can be used for, if you fish with bullheads for flatheads, and a lot of people do that, they'll go to these little ponds, catch little 8, 9, 10-inch bullheads, and use those for bait. Because I don't know why, but a flathead catfish, hates a bullhead. That is something, they detest them or something. I mean, they don't bite them because they want to eat them. They bite them because they want to destroy them. Maybe it's because they're notorious for getting in flatheads' nests. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. But you take these and you can cut the spines off of them, off the top and off both of their dorsal fins, and it won't prevent you from getting a good hook set when that fish takes them and goes to bite down. They won't get spined in the mouth when they try to grab a hold of it. All right, now, pliers. And you're thinking, what in the world are you doing with lineman's pliers for a catfish tackle box? Here's why. There's a couple of videos out there of guys getting hooks in their fingers, okay? And couldn't get them out, because it's kind of hard to hold the fish, get a hold of the hook, and hold your hand and everything else, try to get that out. But if you've got lineman's pliers, instead of just a little cheap pair of Walmart no-cutter needle nose, and you get a hook in your hand, you can cut that hook. And then the fish and the line can do whatever they want to sitting there, and you can deal with that hook without that fish attached to it. Or you can go ahead, get rid of the fish, get your gear in, start the boat up, and get yourself back to the ramp so you can go to the hospital and get it cut out if that's what you got to do. But very important. And you can use these to take the hooks out of any fish that you catch. They'll work just fine. You don't have to have a pair of pliers that's 6 inches long, nose on them to take a hook out. If you're fishing for muskie or a shark or something like that, something that's got teeth, and you're going to have to put your hands back in there, then yeah, the needle nose pliers, you probably need those. But I like the lineman's for that reason. And they're strong enough, instead of like little needle nose you can't get no pressure on, they're strong enough they're going to cut these big wire hooks. Because if you catfish, you're not catfishing with a little brass hook. You've got something substantial, piece of metal there you're going to have to cut. Most of them little cheap needle nose pliers you get from Walmart ain't going to cut them. Now, this is something I keep in my tackle box, and I use them. But the only reason I keep them in my tackle box is because they're size efficient, and I don't have to worry about them. If you open this up, it's a cricket cage. Okay, then when you need a cricket out of it, pop it open. You can get in there and get them. Close it right back up. Done deal. It's real simple to use. It's made by Flambeau. They sell them at Walmart. I think they're $2.99, $3.99, something like that. I paid for this. It wasn't much at all. But the thing about it is, when you get done using it, you get rid of your crickets, and you're done using it, lock it together, throw it in a tackle box. You ain't got to worry about it. You ain't got to worry about somebody stepping on it, flattening it. You ain't got to worry about it getting dented or the screen getting broke or all that stuff, or blowing out of the boat when you're going down the lake. Close it up, throw it back in your tackle box. It's out of the way, and you got it when you need it again, if you need it again. But remember, them artificial lures will save you a big headache, in my opinion, over at live bait if you're fishing the same day that you're going to be catfishing if you're fishing for live bait. Now, there's one more thing in here that I have not covered that I think everybody needs to keep. Or actually, there's two more things. I think you need to keep beads in your tackle box. It'll help you protect your knots if you tie knots. If you use a slip sinker, like a no-roll sinker or an egg sinker or a cannonball, and you put it on your main line and it slides up and down, and that sinker's hitting your knot. If you put one of these beads just above your knot and then put your sinker above that, when that sinker does that, it'll hit the bead. You don't got to worry about it beating on your knot and loosening your knot or wiring your knot and causing a weak spot in your line. Because unfortunately, when you're catfishing, if you've got a weak spot in your rig, a good sized catfish is going to find it. He will expose it, because they are notorious for lulling you to sleep, letting you get them close to the top of the water until they hit that light or see that boat, and then they go just nuts. So, like I said, you want to try to keep your rig as strong as possible and intact through your full day of fishing. So these beads will help you a whole lot. Now, also, we've got something in here. If you're going to use big slip floats that you may make, I do have some of those. I just don't have them here. They're on rods in the boat. I just don't have any with me out here to show you. But bobber stoppers. Now, I don't particularly like these, but it's all that I could find at Walmart the other day, and I don't know where my little rubber ones that are on the wire that you just pull onto the line, I like those a lot better. These will work. If you tighten them up and trim them right, they'll last a pretty good time. They're not good about sliding up and down the lot to readjust, so you got to pretty much put them where you want them the first time, and let them be, especially on heavier lines, because that when you try to move them, they get loose, and then once they get loose, that's it, game over. They won't stay where you want them to put. But the rubber ones are much better, but you can make do with these. They're on a little plastic, excuse me, they're on a little plastic, like a piece of a straw. You just slide your line through that, slide it up to where you want it, slide the plastic out of the thread, wet it, and then pull the two ends of the thread and trim it down, and it's small enough it'll go right through your fishing rod eyes. Won't stop you having a problem with casting or anything. They come with beads that you can put right below your knot, and then put a little bit bigger bead on that to stop your float. You know, depending on how big a bead you need to stop your float. It may be big enough, may not. But with catfish floats, most of them's got bigger eyes, and especially the ones like I make. I use coffee stirrers that come from restaurants, the little bitty tiny, real stiff kind of straw. That's what I use for my eye to go through it. And you'll need a little bit bigger bead to keep from going down through that. But we'll get into that when I make a video showing how I make those. But anyway, beads, the bobber stoppers, you need these in your tackle. There'll be a time, I promise you there'll be a time, if you're catfishing, you're going to need these, especially if it's a place that's got flatheads. If you're not utilizing the float system to fish for flatheads, you're making a mistake. Now, here's a 79-cent investment, okay, that has already saved me $175. These are a rod floater, okay, and they got these little Velcro strips right here on them, and you open them up and put them around your rod. Rod goes right in that cut, goes right around the blank of your rod. Then you Velcro it on there, put it right above your handle on your rod, right above the butt of the upper butt of your handle. I guess that would, I don't know what that would be called on a rod handle. I don't, but anyway, it's right above the top. You know, right when you get to the top of the handle. Put that right on top of it. It'll float your rod. Almost any. Well, to give you an idea, see that big bait casting reel right there? Can you see that? That big bait casting reel right there? That's a huge reel. Big Shimano. Got a line counter on it. And it's on a big Shakespeare catfish rod. It floated that rod. Not once. Twice. 2 times I had that rod, same rod, sitting on the side of the boat, fishing on the bottom, wasn't paying attention, looked over, it was taking off, hit the water. I thought, well, that's done for. The only thing that saved it both times, it was a small flathead. It went to ground. It went to its favorite place to hide out, and just maybe a few seconds later, I seen the butt of the rod pop up out of the water. Picked the rod up, catfish was still on it. One time I got the fish, the other time he got in some stuff and got hung up. I couldn't get him out and had to break him off. But the point being, saved me my rod and reel. Saved me $150. Cheap investment. If you see them at Walmart, they was like $1.79 for 2. I believe was in a pack. If I'm not mistaken, there was 2 in there. I keep them. I always keep them in my box. So if I'm in a situation where that I'm thinking I'm going to need to lay my rod down, or if I'm going to be going bank fishing, oh yeah. All right, now that's about everything in here that I think is directly a requirement for catfishermen, except for the last little thing here. Okay, now I'm just going to pull out a couple. I have a lot of sinkers in my tackle here. I have these donut sinkers with the eyelet, and like I said, you can fix those on those snaps to slide up and down your line. I got them all the way up to 5 ounce and all the way down to 1 ounce. And I also use a lot of no-roll sinkers. I don't know why, I just like them better than the cannonball sinkers. You know, I've got molds for both. I've got molds for these from 2 ounce up to 8 ounce, I think. And then my cannonball sinkers, I can make up to 5 ounce, I believe is what my mold will make. But I don't like the cannonball sinkers. I don't know why. To me, I don't like them. These, I like them if I'm going to be fishing on the bottom. Of course, you know, they're no roll. They're not going to go anywhere. But even if I'm suspended fishing, you know, I want something that's going to stay down on my bead right above the swivel on my rig and hold my bait where I want it and stay in that 2 to 5 foot range off the bottom. And I'm sure cannonball sinker would do it just fine. But I just, for some reason, I like these better. And I don't know why. It's just, I just always used them. Either one of them would work just fine. And there's probably some more designs of sinkers out there. You know, they make the pyramid looking ones with the ring that comes out of them. I've got some of those. I've got some molds to make those. Of course, there's the little stick weights. You can get those with the eyelets. I've got some of those. But now what I don't have here in my box, and I don't, looking around here to see if I've got any on a rod that's in here, and I don't see any, is the new thing, the stick weights. Now, I don't have any of those flexible ones yet. I haven't bought any of those or took time to make them. I have been on the lookout for some rope that had a outer woven shell with a cord that could be removed. And if I can find those, I can make my own. I can put flotation in the upper end and weight in the bottom. And that seems to be the deal, to go about 95% snagless when you're drifting. So, but I've took some 1/2-inch PEX line, cut it in about 18-inch pieces, and plug both ends. Plug one in with a wooden dowel and put a small nail through it, and bent that nail over so it wouldn't work its way out, and then put about 5 or 6 ounces of weight in the bottom of that. I can't remember how much I put in. It was 5 or 6 ounces, the ones I made. And then what I did after I got that in there, I took a piece of paper and I stuffed it down in there, piece of tissue paper, stuffed it in there until it got about 2 inches from the weight. So it was, you know, this much in there and then this much space above that. And then I took spray foam in a can, put it in there, sprayed, and filled that whole rest of that up. That whole PEX, filled it all the way up. And then, while it was still moist enough that I could do it, I stuffed a wooden dowel down in that and cut it off and drove a nail through it and bent it over, and then put me a screw-in eyelet into that piece of wood, so that what I had flotation in the top of that and weight in the bottom. And to test it, I put it in a fish tank and just dropped it in, and it stood straight up, you know. But there was not enough flotation in the front to affect its down. I mean, it goes right to the bottom. It goes right to the bottom and stand almost straight up. I've seen some guys that had these that fished in real heavy cover that had made some 4 or 5 inches long, you know, some really big ones. But the ones I made were about 18, 20 inches long. And like I said, I just bought a few feet of PEX line at the plumbing store and put that together, and was no time making them. I'm going to make a video on how I do those, so people can fix them up and not have to spend a whole bunch of money on them, because they are expensive if you order them, and you can make them way cheaper than you can order them. But I don't have any of those in here right now, or I'd show you one. But I promise I will get some out, get some in a video soon about how I make those. But other than that, guys, that's, you know, like I said, it's not a tackle box like a bass fisherman would have. You know, it ain't got $2,000 worth of lures in it, 67 different kinds of hooks, but it does have a significant amount of equipment that, in my opinion, you gotta have. And no joke, seriously, the tackle box, the box you use for this, like I said, you can see what I've got. The name's on there. That has nothing to do with advertising for anybody, okay? Because I don't want to do that. I'll just say what you need to do is you need to find you a small job box. This is actually a system where you could lock ones on top of each other with these little things right here, and they actually make a radio that you could lock on top of this. And I had it at one time. I had the whole system, and you could take it to the boat wheel and have your tackle box sitting on top of the radio. The radio locked right to the bottom of the tackle box, and you could play your radio and everything, recharge your phone, run a 12-volt light, whatever you need to do off the radio, and your tackle box was attached right to it. But you couldn't leave the radio out there when you come home. You had to take it in. But this thing here seals 100% watertight. It's been sitting in my boat for over a year, and the inside of it has never had a drop of moisture in it, not once. I never take it out of my boat, and my boat does not sit in a barn. It sits outside, and I've never once had any kind of moisture in this whatsoever. And there's a thing sometimes that in hot weather, if you get out there and this thing heats up, it won't want to open. When you open these, it'll be kind of like vacuum sealed. It's got a thing right up here. You can turn this. I'll tilt this over where you can see it a little bit. It's right here. You can turn that and loosen it, and it'll, like a pressure cooker, it'll release the pressure on the inside. Make sure you tighten it back up, because when you tighten that back up, that seals it back up, and then you ain't gonna get no water in there. And it's got real good locks and latches to lock it down. They're real strong, as you can see. It takes a lot of pressure to close them. Got ability to put a lock on this thing, and they're handy. But they're not the only company that makes these. There's several companies out there that makes these kinds of boxes. But that's the kind of box you're going to need to have a good quality fishing box for catfish stuff. And they're tall enough that if you're going to bank fish, you can use this to lay your rods on, and you ain't got to run around doing the forked stick thing, you know. You can set that there and put your rods on it, and it's big enough to hold them up. and you don't got to worry about it getting drug in the water or falling over with your rods on it. But guys, that's what I have. Well, all right, guys, that's what I got. A tackle box is an important piece of equipment. If you're going to catfish, you're going to do any kind of fishing, you got to have a tackle box. But having a box without having the right stuff is just the same as trying to hunt with a gun with no bullets. You got to have the things you need, and you got to have it in a box that'll protect it, and it'll be there when you need it. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all watching, and if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to click the bell so you get notifications when we put out new videos. It's the Fat Man Outdoors. I'm the Fat Man, and I'm gone.